Hi, friends, and welcome to the Making Spaces podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sarah, and this is
Josie, the other co-host.
And this is a podcast about making space for yourself, both literally and figuratively, and for others as well. Today, we have a very special guest who Josie is going to introduce.
Yes, Mom. Today, we have Jackie Gronlund with us. She is a writer, speaker, and what I would call an embodiment advocate, right?
I like that. Yeah. That's what I am. Sure. I love it.
She's really good at branding. So I don't like the brand mom that she came up with, but like for other people, she's really good at branding.
Okay, I feel you.
Yeah. And also, like, you should just be warned, we've had a long day. So the two of us, this might be the funniest interview we've ever done. But Jackie, the question we always start with is, what is one of your favorite spaces and why?
Okay. I've thought on this one for a hot minute, and I feel like my favorite space hasn't happened yet, but it is going to very soon.
Ooh, tell us more.
Okay, so basically, me and my girlfriend Kaylee over there, who is just cleaning up the back of my chair.
I love it.
Yes. We're gonna renovate an RV and travel up the Pacific coast and then do some other traveling. She's a travel nurse, so we'll probably just go wherever that ends up. But I feel like my favorite space is going to be the RV on a beach at like golden hour. There are two, almost 3 dogs.
Almost 3?
Almost 3. One's still cooking. She's not done yet.
Got it. Jackie, I am restoring a 1973 Airstream currently to be able to, one of the things about making spaces is to be able to have a podcast studio as well as a little home to travel and to capture people's stories. But yeah, I get you. It's getting to move
amazing.
That thing. Yeah, it'll be great. It's not.
Oh my gosh.
It's not great right now. It's got a long and painful and a funny story that eventually we'll capture. But it actually was on the phone today with a company that restores them. So my RV is actually my trailer is all the way up in Bend, Oregon. And so I go back and forth to work on it.
Oh, wait, where are you now?
I am in Orange County, California.
Oh, you're in California. Okay, and is Josie there too?
Yep, Tustin. Don't stalk me.
You go to Tustin all the time.
Hey, where are you located?
Right now, Nashville. But I got to get out of the South, so I'm headed over to San Diego in about a month.
Ooh,
so I'll be right in your neighborhood, kind of.
You'll have to come hang out. We're going to be fully vaccinated at that point. She's fully vaccinated. I got one more coming.
Same.
Nashville is great. That's actually an area that I've spent a lot of time in.
Yeah.
My brother lives about an hour and a half out.
Okay.
I've never been. I kind of, no offense to the South, I kind of avoid the South as a person of Mexican descent.
I'm with you. I'm trying to get out. I'm so trying to get out.
You guys,
I'm sure it's lovely.
You know, if you're going to be inclusive, you're going to have to open yourself up to the potential of liking the South.
I've gone to Texas. I've been to Virginia. I'm going. It's just a slow burn for me. Okay.
Yeah,
I know. And I feel like I want to go with you, but that's like kind of like when you're visiting someone's like crazy aunt, because then the friend can explain, like, they don't really mean that. That's kind of what I feel like with the South. Like, I can talk shit on it because I lived there for so long, but I feel like other people, I get like, what the? But Josie, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to make you mad. I don't love LA. I was there yesterday dropping off she's from LA, loves LA, will murder you if you talk bad about LA. I grew.
Well, it depends on which side of LA. I'm definitely more of the
west side?
East type bitch. Yeah.
Oh, wait, where now? I lived in LA for a little bit. Where were you?
I grew up in Southgate.
Okay.
I don't know if you know where that is. That's near Compton.
I know
That's where most people know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was in Inglewood yesterday, and it was trying to find parking. It was fighting for. It's just not my thing. Everything's gray. Everything's brown. Just not my thing.
Price you gotta pay, man. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Now that we've decided that, Jackie, it was so cool to check out your book and to hear a little bit of your story and hear how you're learning how to connect to your body. And actually, you had one of my best friends, so fun, Kevin, on your podcast. It was really fun to listen to them speak. So that was cool. So you want to talk a little bit about your journey as far as how that's been kind of making space for yourself, but also sort of opening the door for other people? Because you have like a lot of followers of people who are trying to, in some ways, I think, do the same thing. So you want to share a little bit about what you're in the midst of?
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of just mean like the development of my podcast or
Yeah. And
okay.
speaking and what you share about, because it's all about, like Josie said, getting into your body and getting to love her and know her.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God. It's been a long time since I've been interviewed. I'm like interviewing people every week. I'm like, okay, I'm answering the question now. Yeah, so the podcast basically, well, I guess to go back a little bit, I was in treatment last year for an eating disorder. And I was there for about 4 to 5-ish months. And a question that they kept asking us to talk about was, what is your relationship like with your body? And so we had to like write these letters back and forth from us to our body, from our body back to us. And it was so trippy because it felt so separate and it felt so distant. And every piece of work that we were doing in treatment felt like it kept coming back to the same thing, which was, oh, my body knows. Oh, what does my body need? Oh, I've been like totally rejecting my body or shaming my body. And it was all about that relationship. And so when I was getting out of treatment, I knew I wanted to make a podcast. I've known I wanted to do a podcast for a long time because I used to have a YouTube channel called Coffee Chats with Jax.
Oh, stop it. Oh, that's cute.
That's cute.
Yeah.
That's
real
cute.
Oh
cute.
my God, it's so cute. I did that for like 7 years. I don't even know. I was a youngin'. I was like 17.
Wow.
I don't know. It was a whole thing, but that I
I
wanted
don't
to
think
move that
YouTube
into.
existed when I was 17, guys. Anyway, keep going.
It was there. So I wanted to turn that into a podcast because I knew that the conversations I was having there, because that was kind of a platform I used to talk a lot about my mental health, a lot about faith stuff, sexuality stuff, relationship stuff. It was kind of like just a weekly brain dump almost. And it turned into something where I wanted to talk about much bigger topics. Like I got really into talking about rape culture and diet culture and just all sorts of stuff, especially like the more I discovered about myself, like the more I kind of went to therapy and did work, the more I realized the depth I wanted to get to with my videos. And I couldn't get that with like a 5-minute video. So I'm like, I want to do a podcast and talk to other people because other people have more insight than just I'll ever have. And so I wanted to do a podcast called The Unity Project, but I did not know it was going to be about my relationship with my body till in treatment. And then I was like, that makes sense. That's what this is going to be about. Because it became like my favorite conversation to have. So yeah, like a month later-ish is when I started working on my first episode. It was nuts.
And you're connecting.
I love it.
And by unity, it's really connecting our entire selves to our body, to our mind. It's an interesting, we've had 3 interviews lately that have gone to this place where people, when they talk about space, what they realize is so much of it includes how do I get in touch with the thing with which I indwell in space, which is my body, right? So if I'm in a adversarial relationship with my own body, it's really difficult for me to make space for other people because I can't be in my body and I don't know how I feel about you being in your body. And then I'm going to make, decisions or whatever based on that. And so it's been interesting. We've had 3 now conversations about this idea of really making, I don't even want to say making peace, making friendship. Or is that where the title unity, is that what that is for you within this space of embodiment?
Yeah, I think like honestly, one of the most impactful interviews I've had was with this lady named Hillary McBride. She's
my friend. Yeah, she's great.
She's your friend?
Yeah.
Oh, she's so cool. But she talked a lot about how like the question that I start out with always is to describe the relationship that you have with your body. And every single time people will talk about, they'll talk about the relationship with it. But her answer was very much so like, well, I am my body. Like we are one. Like this is how it was. But now we're like this one being because you're so integrated. And I've realized that that's really like unity with yourself is everything. And so like originally my idea for like the Unity Project was going to be more of like, which is also really important, but it's just not my thing to talk about right now, is like world unity and like cultures and all that, which we end up talking about anyway. But I realized that like before you can get there, you really got to get just inside of your own skin.
Yeah. It's the secret sauce that we don't often talk about. I think there's this sense that there is this movement happening. It's really interesting. We always, and we'll get to there with you eventually. We ask people to like give one tangible way that you can make space. And one of our interviewees is the one who started this body conversation, because she said you can make space by being okay with basically me being a fat person. And we had, for me, I'm also someone who had an eating disorder and have disordered body, lots of fun things. I have been so afraid of that word. I've been afraid to use that word with other people. I've been afraid to allow that someone else to own that word. And it was a beautiful moment of us just going, oh, wait a minute. Like, her using that word is a really important part of her kind of her integrating her total story. And if I wanted to make space for her, I was going to have to be okay with where they're at, but it requires you kind of getting into your own skin. And you're right. It hits everything is spiritual. Everything is connected. Everything, if I hate my body, then the way that I live and exist in this world is really disjointed and full of strife.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because it bleeds into everything. Like, talking about eating disorders opens the door to so many things regarding like your body self relationship. Because if you're not connected, then it's really easy to just not eat, or to just make yourself like run until you basically pass out. It becomes so easy to be disconnected with an eating disorder that almost like being disconnected becomes like the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started to realize that, like, looking at my body and like the relationship with her of what ideally I would want it to look like, and seeing how far away I was just like, oh my God, that's a lot of work to do. And like, you can look at it through that, or you can look at it like through addiction or through sexuality, anything that, like, I don't know. There's just so many things.
Right. It's a separation. It's interesting. I had a podcast that was just a year-long project. And Hillary was one of my first guests, right? She was like, I want to be on your podcast, which I thought was great, because she was one of the first people I had experienced a superior, one of our ups in the church. So I'm a pastor. And I had experienced a pastor saying to me, and I mentioned this before on this podcast, but that my body was dangerous, and that no woman would trust me with their husband or boyfriend. And so when you are someone who is a recovering person who already doesn't love your body, to hear that, it's like, oh yeah, I like what you're saying right now. I can get behind that. Yeah, she is dangerous. She's awful. Like, I already don't like her. So go ahead. And I remember it was Hillary who really, I hadn't talked about it publicly at all. She knew that story. And about a year later came on my podcast, and we were sort of processing that. And she was the one who pointed out, like, until we help other people really learn to embody, to be in their bodies and to be okay with their bodies, then we're just a bunch of people walking around with shame who are going to shame other people. So it's great to hear you bringing people on and asking them the first thing. I wonder how many of them that's not a question they've asked, right? Like, what's my relationship to my body? I'm in it,
It's there, it exists.
But I love Hillary's answer. I am it. It is, we are, and it's not a it, it's a she. That was the language too. I remember if I talk about my body around Hillary, she always corrects me. She, like, oh, right, there's a pronoun around her. Great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, yeah, that is really, really, it's incredible to hear people's answers, because after we talk through that, we talk through like, okay, tell me about a time when you were the most disconnected from your body. And then we talk about what that felt like. And I'm really big into talking. My therapist uses the term like strategies. So like an eating disorder, she would say would be like a strategy to survive, or addictions, like a strategy. And so we talk through a lot of like that, which was like, how did you manage to stay disconnected from your body to survive whatever trauma or whatever this you're going through? And it's so fun to hear the journey going from there to like where the healing and the unity comes towards at the end. And it's so special because it's also just like a never ending journey. And it just blows me away. I cried actually at the end of the last interview I did. I was like, oh my gosh, that's hits on so many things. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how even I grew up in the church, and I grew up in a the Hispanic Pentecostal church, as our listeners know. I like to
Ooh.
make fun of it. But just it was funny how embodiment and bodies were seen in such a different light. Like you could dance as long as it's in the aisles, but God forbid you dance to any other music outside of religious music or in any other space outside of a religious space. So like my dad the other day made a joke because I was wearing like a flouncy fun shirt. He's like, wow, are you gonna go teach salsa? And I was like, no, Dad, remember, I'm not allowed to dance. I never learned how to dance.
Oh boy.
And I mean, we make fun of it now and he still believes the same things. It's my daddy dearest and I have a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
But just that notion that religion can play a huge part in how you process things through your body, or trauma. I had a really traumatic childhood, so now I struggle with disassociation in life. I can walk through a Joann's and not be there. Like mentally, my body is just going and my brain is just not there. Which is scary. And I am somebody with very high self-esteem. So you would think that wouldn't be like an issue, the whole disassociating from your body if you love it. But it totally is, because people traumatize you into doing that. And
Yeah.
just this, like, the embodiment journey can be very different for very different people, and that you could love your body but still not be in it. And yeah, we read your book. Thanks for sending it to us.
Thank you for reading it. It's so kind of you
Yeah.
guys.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more about the process of writing your book. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so the book you guys read was my last one. I published it a couple of years ago. I'm actually at the near end of writing my third book, which is called The Unity Project. It kind of goes along with my podcast. But the first, so Finding Home, that was, oh my gosh, that was a journey. So basically, I guess if you've read it, then you'll know a bit of like the Boston story, which was basically, I realized that I had spent so much of my life like running away from, at the time, I didn't know what, like running away from pain, running away from trauma, running away from like broken relationships. And to do that, it was helpful for me to move across the country, like over and over and over again, like Colorado to LA, to Nashville, to Boston, to LA, to Nashville. It was just, it kept going. And so I hit this point when it was probably the most spontaneous move I had made, which was I got offered a job to work in Boston if I moved there. I think I had like a 3-day notice at the end of a tour. And I said yes. And I ended up getting there and falling into like probably the worst depression of my life. And that is when I came to terms for the first time with my eating disorder, and when I started like coming to terms with so many things. And so the book, I actually started writing the book when I was in Boston, which is interesting because, it's such a long story, but I wrote it at the beginning of my time in Boston when I was still trying to paint this picture that everything was okay and that things were good and my move was exciting. So the first draft of the book is so much about like the pretty cobblestone roads and the brick buildings. And then all of a sudden, spoiler alert, my best friend, the one who asked me to move to Boston to work for her, her parents ended up making me leave Boston because I opened up about depression and my eating disorder. And so after that happened, that was kind of just like this rug got ripped out from under my feet. And I was literally paid to leave the city. Like, it's a whole story. And so after leaving the city, I ended up back in LA. And that's when I started, like, I realized I had a decision to make. I was like, okay, I have this draft Finding Home that I'm working on. And I felt so angry about it and I was going to throw it away. I was like, I either have that option or I can try to tell the truth. And so I decided to start over again. And I realized that the story I was writing was so much different than the first one. And it was just really honest about different places I've looked for home, different places I've looked for belonging, basically. And so I looked to my sister to find belonging because she was like my metric system of what was okay or not. And I looked to body image stuff, which was like eating disorder stuff, for career, or so many different avenues. And then I'm trying to remember how the book went. So at the first half of the book, I would write those out, and then I would mirror that with different stories from Boston that kind of showed the same theme. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of writing the book, I realized I was like, oh, this is a whole journey of just me coming back to myself. It's like you can move wherever you want in the country and try in all these different ways, but if you don't feel at home inside of your own body, you're never going to get there. You're going to have to keep moving and keep running in some kind of way. And it was like a giant therapy session writing that book. Oh my gosh.
It's so interesting, this idea of home and where is home. So for actually all three of us, we've moved pretty significantly in our lives. And I think there is a false narrative out there that somewhere is going to feel like home. I think that we have this idea that, once I find that home, there's a movie called Away We Go where they're trying to find where their home is going to be. And then they kind of have this realization that like, I'm in my home all the time, which means I can take my home with me. We're much more turtles than we think, right? Like we carry this thing with us, but I think we are so compelled to believe that something's wrong all the time, and there's something wrong in this home, and especially if we've been getting all these different narratives that tell us who we are and what our body means, and everybody gets that, right, from commercials or whatever it might be. And I think it's so beautiful for you to say, like, I went through all this stuff and then I realized I already was home.
Yeah.
I think of that, what is it? The Magnetic, I can't remember the name of the band, but they have that song, Home is Wherever I'm With You. And I think,
yes.
I love that song so much. But I think that reality is like home is everywhere we go because home is within us. And learning, how would you define this idea of home now if you were to, integrate who you were then into who you are now when you think about home?
Yeah. That's a good question, which I have not thought about in a long time. It's so interesting because that was like my question for everything when I was writing that book. And now it's so much time has passed. I feel like, I don't know. So I've been doing a lot of work in therapy regarding like family stuff and kind of like what home looked like growing up and kind of because a big thing that I've been learning is like when you're a kid, you're not looking for what belonging is or looking for what love is, but you're told what it is by your parents or whoever your caregivers are. And so I've kind of like recently been pulling that apart, and I'm in this incredible relationship with Kaylee over there. And so that's kind of been redefining what home is supposed to look like versus what I was taught that it was. And I think that has added a lot to my definition. Because at first I would have said, or at the end of writing that book, I would have said home is where you're loved unconditionally, where you belong. I gave this whole picture, I think at the end of like me and my best friend, Amy Pape. Shout out to Amy Pape. She's the best. But I think now it's that, but I feel like I understand it so much deeper. So I would like call it the same thing. Like it is where you are, I think Glennon Doyle puts it, both held and free. So you're like held and loved for everything that you are, but you're also free to be and explore everything and everywhere you want to go. And you're like not going to get kicked out because of it. Not going to get like, you're breaking these rules, you gotta, so you're out. It's just you're here and you're welcome and you're safe, and you also get to expand and explore and be as big as you want to be.
And if we give that to ourselves, what is that? Then we're not looking for anyone. I think the false narrative a lot of us got was like another human can complete us, right? So what does that suggest? That suggests that a big part of us is missing. What if I just get that perfect? For me, it was like, if I am just that size, I'm just that size, that's when I'm going to feel at home in this body because I won't hate her so much. Or if I get that job that gives me purpose and meaning, then I'm going to feel at home. I'm going to feel, if I can find that house, that perfect house, that house that is going to be home. And we spend so long searching for the thing that was always within us. And I think there's something that happens to all of us when we realize that. And every day it's a struggle. Today was like a crazy day where I had to literally sit down and go, you are fine and everything is fine. But you have this like sense of like, everything's not fine. And it's those moments when we come home to ourselves and go, is everything not fine? Maybe it is okay. How can I sit with her? And what would it look like to be kind to her? What would it look like to, to be this person that is okay with, okay, well, my home's a little disordered right now, but here it is, it's contentment is almost what I hear in you explaining it. And even in your writing in the second half of your book, is there like learning to come to a place of contentment, and striving is kind of let go of a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just as easy as buying a new pair of jeans that fit the way you want them to fit.
That's also true. That and some new jeans. That is how I define
a good pair of jeans. Josie,
good pair
actually,
of jeans.
we were talking earlier today about even things from like bathing suit buying to all these things that put us into places and spaces where we're looking at things and through the light of other people's lenses. And so getting really aggressively comfortable with our own lens and our own body and it's such a neat journey. What have you found as you've been interviewing people? Are a lot of them finding this connection between mind and body? Are you mostly talking to people who already have this? Like Kevin and Hillary are two people who already have this connection to their body. In fact, Kevin and I talk every day. That's how we start our day. And normally Kevin will say to me, normally Kevin will say to me, I'll say a emotion or whatever. And Kevin will say, well, what does that feel like? Where do you feel that? And I'm like, I don't want to get in her.
That's such a therapist question.
I know. But it is really helpful, right? So
Kevin.
when you're interviewing people, are you interviewing people who are particularly gifted in this embodiment, or are you kind of across the spectrum?
It's definitely across the spectrum, because I feel like, I don't know. I mean, everybody has anyone who would be interested in this, I guess, in talking about this, would have some kind of like history of, I guess, being aware of your body if you're being open to talk about this. So it's like, I'm trying to think how to even explain it. Like I have interviewed people who I would consider like experts on the body, like you're saying, like Hillary and Kevin, and that's incredible. And then there's people who have a lot of stories of like some kind of addiction or some kind of eating disorder or some kind of just any kind of trauma that has caused them to disconnect. Like, I think there's just so much beauty in all of those stories about what that looks like and the coming back. And so I think like one of the biggest things that I've noticed and that I think I want to push for people to hear is that everybody's in process and everybody's relationship with their body looks different. And just because you might feel really connected today, tomorrow you might not. And that doesn't mean you failed. That just means you're just a human being. And so I don't know. I think it's important to talk to everybody, like every type of person, because all the stories, we can learn from all the stories.
Yeah. I love it. Knowing what other people's processes are and realize, I always like to say that I don't get starstruck because we're all going to fucking die.
That literally is something that she says on the regular.
That's true, and so sad, but so true.
Yeah, and like hearing all these people that's like, some people love Kevin, right? Kevin has meant a lot to a lot of people. So them hearing that they also go through this journey of, losing touch with their body is important. Because I mean, the average Joe would be like, ugh, of course they probably don't. They don't deal with that. They love their body. They're so in tune. They never disconnect. But hearing that, no, sometimes I have a fucking bad day and I'm going to disconnect. How impactful could that's everything to somebody, right? Like, it's amazing.
Absolutely. And like, even just allowing yourself to recognize when you do need to disconnect, like, because we can't be fully present 24/7. That's just not realistic. And if we like hope to be that way, or I think someone like Kevin is that way, is to just, it's honestly just to kind of set us up for failure, for burnout, because we need a second to let ourselves check out at the end of the day, whether that is reading a book or watching a funny movie or playing sports, which is my new favorite random way to disconnect, is throwing a football. But it's like choosing those kind of methods versus choosing like, oh, I'll just go get really drunk and disconnect that way without even knowing I need to disconnect. But like, it's doing the same thing, but in a very aware mindset and a harmful mindset. And so I think it's helpful to be able to recognize that's just something that your body needs some time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
How do I, what is this like, what is this feeling inside of me? How, maybe I can't label it. So like for me, running is the thing that I do when I'm in that place. Like I have to just go run. Dancing used to be, Chris Rodriguez, one of our mutual friends, him and I talk a lot about this, but dancing for me used to be, because it takes so much of my mind to learn choreography, and more guys, when you get to my age, there will be this thing where all of a sudden you can't remember the thing you just heard. I'm going to say it's age and not that I had COVID earlier. But like learning choreography means that I cannot be paying attention to anything else. Like I'm in that space, and when I'm learning that, but it's not just, I'm a very intellectual human. And so sometimes I can get in my head space in really not healthy ways, where just I'm mulling over the same thing, thinking maybe if I think about this 18 times, I'm going to fix it. But when you're learning choreography, when you're moving in your body and all you're doing is connecting to your body and what you're learning in that moment, there is something incredible that happens. It's like it all kind of comes together. And oftentimes I'll leave that going, oh, now I have an answer to that thing that I thought I could just mull over. I thought I could just produce and do. And I think football is another example. Like if I don't pay attention to what's happening, it's going to hit me in the face, right? I have to pay attention to it. Or even like learning a new thing. Like Josie's been queen of like, I'm going to pick up 17 hobbies during quarantine, which by the way, she was already busy before. But I think that it's an embodiment, right? Like it's learning a new thing is not just your brain, it's also your body, right? And ableism, even in this, like some people, it's not that they can go out and get physical. They're going to have to do something else to be in that space of unity, as you call it, this connection of mind and body. And I think spirit too comes in there a little bit. Do you talk much about that sort of connection with all of that?
Yeah, actually, that was like a really big part of treatment, actually, is we had, I think like once every couple of days, we had this group. I forgot what it was called, but it was, we just called it mindful movement group type thing. And so they were very big on the like that was something I had to just pull apart and deconstruct, was my relationship with movement, because I'm also a runner. And that was like something that I love, but I struggled with a lot, because like moving, I had to like be so careful, because I realized that moving can go from connecting with myself to totally disconnecting and trying to manipulate myself into something.
Right.
And so treatment was really helpful with that, because we would do these mindful movement things where we would like play this game called like All My Neighbors, which is just one of those like basically like never have I ever type games. Or like we would play football or frisbee or things that were movement, and we had to pay attention, but we weren't like kicking our asses in the gym or something.
Right.
It was so helpful. And so I do talk a little bit about that on my podcast. A lot of people that I've talked to are really into yoga, which I love yoga. Oh my gosh, I'm such a wannabe yogi. It's amazing. But it's just really special, because it 100% is this moment of like, I need to be aware of what I'm doing in this moment, in this like position or whatever you're doing. But it takes away that mindset of like, oh, how many calories am I burning? Or like, how many miles did I just run? What's my fastest record type of thing? Like, and that could be really life-giving for people too. It all just depends on what your motivation for it is.
Right.
Like, what's your purpose of doing
What's
that?
your metric? Like, are you, my dear friend and I we were both runners in high school. And we talk about how in the last couple of years, we've learned to integrate things that aren't working against our body. So both of us were lifters too for a while, like, right, that competitive mindset. I played soccer in high school. So I just have that, like, I got to, exactly what you're talking about. Can I dominate my body? Which is just another form, guys, of like trying to disconnect, like, right. And her and I talked about how we've really started integrating some practices of health that get us in our body and aren't working against our body. So doing yoga or Pilates or bar or all this stuff that like I had a little more practice in it just because I had danced for so long, but to see it as not working against, like, no offense to people who do CrossFit. That's great. That's your thing. But it's so against the body. And it's so like, how can I dominate this body that it feels like it's another way to disconnect a little bit. It's a separation. It's like taking it apart and staring at your own self.
That is one hobby I did not pick up in quarantine. I am not a worker-outer. No, thank you.
Go you, Josie. Go you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hobby, right? Like, you gotta like it. I don't like it.
It's a hobby to not work out. And I'm like, yes, it's a good hobby. You're like,
yes, I feel good about it.
Oh my gosh.
Jackie, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I know we could talk forever, but I would love to hear if you can think of like one tangible way that starting today, someone who is coming into this episode and they're thinking like, oh man, I want to connect to myself. I want to make space for myself or someone else. What would be like one tangible thing you can think of?
Asking questions without any sort of judgment. I think that one of the best things you could do to kind of create space for someone to feel like they matter and someone to feel cared about and someone to feel like, I don't know, like someone wants to hear what they have to say is to ask questions that are like questions like about them, like intentional. And then, but don't ask them in a way where it's like, just like fully non-judgmental, like I'm just interested in getting to know you. And that is an incredible way I found to make space. Because I always feel like when people are like that with me, that gives me all the space in the world to just explore and to be me. And then if you're asking questions like, or if you treat yourself in that kind of way, I guess like if you're, like I'm a huge journaler. Oh my goodness. Every single day for the past, I don't know, so many years. That's like my first thing I do in the morning is to just really get in touch with like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And just no judgment. Yeah.
That's great.
I love it.
Great questions. Jackie, where can folks find you? YouTube is Coffee with Jax. Is that still a thing?
Oh, not really. I mean, you can go watch a bunch of old videos if you want. You can watch my hair transform from blonde to brown to
you can just tell us where people can find you. I was really just kidding. I would love to know what you're excited to share about now, where people can find you, what's something that they can check out your work through.
Yeah, most of my stuff is through Instagram. If you want to follow me, it's jackieg.tv, or if you want to listen to my podcast, it's just search the Unity Project on any podcast platform. Instagram's probably going to be the best place. If you want to get my book, there's a link to do it through there. So probably the podcast and Instagram.
Thank you so much.
We love it.
We do love it.
Thank you.
Josie, where can folks find
Jackie.
us? I know what you're going to say.
You can find us.
Go ahead.
She tells me what to do, and then what am I supposed to think?
I don't mean to tell you what to do. I'm like suggesting. You can do your own thing. Keep going. Sorry.
You can find us on makingspacespodcast.com for all the things, but you can also follow us on Making Spaces Podcast on Instagram. You can email us at makingspacespodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, you can find us wherever Irreverent Media Group is as well. It's a new thing. We love it. We're all there. Check out our homies too.
They're great. Dirty Rotten Church Kids. We got Mason. We got Kevin. We got White Friends Homework. I mean, there's all kinds of great stuff going on there. You'll hear more and more about it. But we're really glad that we had Jackie today, and we'll see you next week where we will be
Thank
saving
you
a space for you. Bye.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thanks, Jackie.